Do Crohn's disease symptoms keep coming back? Tremfya guselkumab may help. At 12 weeks, rapid symptom remission was achieved in most patients taking Tremfya, and some experienced visible improvement of their intestinal lining at 12 weeks and 1 year. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Explore what's possible and ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Your body is brilliant. Nature's Bounty has a bounty of solutions to help you thrive, supporting your systems from your head to your heels. Nature's Bounty High Absorption Magnesium Glycinate supports heart, bone, nerve, and muscle health, while just one hair growth capsule a day helps grow thicker, fuller hair. Delicious new Nature's Bounty Probiotic Gummies contain prebiotics and postbiotics, supporting gut health, regularity, and immune health. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature. Learn more at naturesbounty.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Hello and good morning, ladies, gentlemen, fanatics of all ages. Welcome to Phillies Therapy, the potential final Phillies Therapy before the trade deadline here in the 2025 regular season. It is July 29th. It is a Tuesday. It is very hot out east and in Illinois, where my co-host finds himself for this road series against the Chicago White Sox. It's a bit of an interesting time in Phillies land. Yes, there is the deadline approaching and all of the different combinations and permutations therein. Yes, the major league team is 2-2 in their last 4, 3-3 in their last 6, 4-4 in their last 8, 5-5 in their last 10, 6-6 in their last 12, and 7-7 in their last 14 to find themselves a game and a half back in the National League East following the Mets' kind of wild loss out in San Diego. Thank you, San Diego, for that. But it's a bit of a somber tone this week that we kind of have to strike because, as most of you may have heard, last night news broke that Hall of Famer Ryne Sandberg had passed away at the age of 65 after a battle with cancer. And while Sandberg was, not the Hall of Fame player he turned out to be with the Phillies, he obviously spent only a very brief time in his major league career with the Phillies. He is inextricably tied to the team, not just because he was drafted by them and brought up as a prospect, traded with Larry Bowa out to Chicago, eventually came back to serve as manager of the major league team after stints in the Cubs minor league system and as third base coach. He may have been miscast as a manager, but that's beside the point. In reality, he was one of the very best second basemen this game has ever seen. And Matt, I'll welcome you in sort of on this note, because we do need to start off by acknowledging a great in the game, a huge looming figure who really in his way helped transform what a second baseman could look like within this game. I mean, his prime and his best years were well before, you and I were born. And in some cases, we're paying close attention to baseball. But to look up his numbers and to look up what he did and his accomplishments and his accolades, a lot of it really speaks for itself, even before getting into who he was as a person and as someone around the game.
Sure, and it's funny because he has very different legacies in Philadelphia and Chicago. I mean, in Chicago here, I mean, he spawned a generation of Cubs fans who then raised their kids as Cubs fans, and his 1984 MVP season is the stuff of legend. And the Cubs went to the playoffs that year, and the Cubs have drawn a lot of fans to Wrigley Field ever since that season. I mean, it essentially was the start of like the modern Cubs era. And no, they haven't been great teams most of those years, but they've been more competitive than they were in the decades that preceded it. And a lot of people point to Sandberg, and that the Sandberg game is a transcendent moment, I think, for a lot of Cubs fans. But in Philadelphia, he's going to be known as the Hall of Famer that the Phillies drafted in the 20th round and traded away. And,
yeah,
I think there are a lot of guys who came up in the Phillies system in later years who played for Sandberg when he was at AAA Lehigh Valley. And I think within the Phillies organization, the second go around for Sandberg, that's how I think a lot of guys will remember him, is that I think he was better suited. And it's odd to say that because he's a Hall of Famer, and many Hall of Famers, very few Hall of Famers went on to go manage in the majors, let alone in the minors, right? I mean, he believed it was important to go do it in the minors and learn the craft. And a lot of guys who played for him in the minor leagues really spoke highly of him as someone who would instill the proper values and things in terms of how the game should be played, and how to treat others, and what the expectations were, and that tact didn't necessarily play in the majors. Now, that said, Sandberg inherited a team that was on the downswing, and the 2014 Phillies, his only full season as manager in the majors, that was a team of veterans who kind of knew it was done. The writing was on the wall. Everybody was pretty miserable, and wasn't exactly the best personality, I think, for that type of team. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest players. I think the tributes have been really cool in recent weeks. I mean, everyone has known in the sport that his health had taken a turn for the worse, and I really appreciated on a personal level getting to know Ryne Sandberg. As a Phillies coach, as a Phillies manager. When the Phillies hired him after the 2013 season, I asked him if I could come out to his house. He lived in Arizona, and just spend a day or two with him and write a feature. And he said, sure. And so I flew out, and just was really struck by like his sort of the two lives, right? I mean, because like Hall of Famers, they, once you become a Hall of Famer like that, it defines you. That is who you are. You don't have to do anything else. Like you can play golf for the rest of your life. You can be an ambassador. You can do all these different things with your grandkids and whatever. And he had done all that stuff and was like, I want something else. And it was a really cool 2 days, like getting to see the other side of him. And part of my idea was to just go watch an Arizona Fall League game with him. And I actually, his car, there was something wrong with his car. And so I ended up having to drive. So I drove Ryne Sandberg from his house to Peoria, I think is where the Phillies had their fall leaguers that fall. And it was just a neat, like I watched Ryne Sandberg pay $7. I went back and read the story because I don't remember all of it, but I watched him pay $7 for a ticket to an Arizona Fall League game, and just sat with him and watched the game with him. And it was neat to see that side of him. And it just, to me, it epitomized the guy that people knew him as. I mean, he's a gentleman. He loved baseball. He loved seeing it played a certain way. And I think that came out in the way he played on the field, and also who he was off the field. And the last time I saw him, I think would have been either this spring or I think it was last spring, maybe. He was still very close to Larry Bowe. He's still very close to Pat Gillick, and Pat Gillick would bring Ryne Sandberg to Philly spring training, usually once a spring. And I think that's the last time we had saw him. And, sad to see him, pass on this soon, right? I mean, like, I think he had more to give to the game, and especially to the city of Chicago, who, he has a statue outside Wrigley Field, and it is the perfect statue, right? It's him. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's him, like, getting into, his like pre-pitch position, right? He's getting into a crouch, waiting for a ground ball hit his way, and it's a position that you don't see a lot of guys necessarily do anymore, or do every pitch, but that was like the Sandberg thing, right? I mean, when I think of him, I'm going to think of him in that pose, and I think it's perfect that the statue is of him in that pose. And just really a sad day. I mean, I think the tributes to the Hall of Fame were cool, and I think it's odd being in Chicago, I guess, for this timing. And Kyle Schwarber, who didn't play for Sandberg, or I don't know if he knew him that well, but was around him quite a bit, when he was with the Cubs, especially in 2016, when the Cubs went on and won the World Series. Sandberg was around quite a bit, that team, both as like an instructor and also as sort of an ambassador type. And Schwarber said something like, he would always give you like the utmost respect, and it's like, you don't need to, like, you're Ryne Sandberg, like like you don't have to do that. And I think that's a very fine way of describing Sandberg.
Yeah, plenty of wonderful tributes out there, and yeah, you could sense that some of the tone around him, on Sunday at the Hall of Fame, could kind of sense that something was possibly about to happen. I don't really know who knew what, but he had been battling cancer since early 2024, I believe. And so Ryne Sandberg passes away far too soon at the age of 65, the 9-time Gold Glover, 10-time All-Star, 1990 Home Run Derby champion, as you mentioned, 1984 MVP. More of a Cubs legend on the field than a Phillies legend for sure, but Philly will always be a part of his story. And I also really liked your colleague Patrick Mooney's story on him, published at The Athletic today. I thought that was a nice memorial.
Yeah, I mean, he was, in this city, he meant everything. And it's funny because he only played in 2 postseason series, right? And it is obviously the postseason wasn't expanded, in the 80s and the early 90s. But, I do think that it's a shame he never got there, but he did get that 2016 Cubs ring, and I think that meant a lot. There's this great photo that I saw going around online of him with Bill Murray, like after Game 7 of the 2016 World Series, and they're like, just in the hallway or something, and it's pretty cool, Yeah. And summertime in Chicago, like I don't know, I mean, like I'm 38 years old. I only caught the tail end of Sandberg's career, but I mean, summertime in Chicago, you think of Wrigley and you think of like people like Ryne Sandberg, like that's just what you think about. So appropriate, I feel like, I guess, then to be here. So
yeah. So with that, there is no easy transition into Phillies baseball. So we'll let a quick early ad break do that for us. Take a breath, and we'll come back and talk about more Phillies related stuff. Hang with us.
Your body is brilliant. Nature's Bounty has a bounty of solutions to help you thrive, supporting your systems from your head to your heels. Nature's Bounty High Absorption Magnesium Glycinate supports heart, bone, nerve, and muscle health, while just 1 hair growth capsule a day helps grow thicker, fuller hair. Delicious new Nature's Bounty Probiotic Gummies contain prebiotics and postbiotics, supporting gut health, regularity, and immune health. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature. Learn more at naturesbounty.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths, and sometimes heights, to ensure the power is always flowing. Which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, thanks for sticking with us. Okay, so let's talk about this Philadelphia baseball team and their continued existence in the state that they exist in. They haven't
that
won
little
or
500
lost.
thing that you reeled off is
it's just, they're
quite the thing. They haven't been separated by more than they haven't been, well, they're stuck in a lot of ways. We can talk about that, but they haven't been separated by more than 2 games from the Mets, either way, up 2 or down 2, since June 16th.
Yep. That is
middle of
6
June, weeks basically of the Mets and Phillies being within 2 games of each other, which is quite the thing.
Yeah, no, it all goes back to what we said. I think we said just before that, it was probably near the start of June, where we're like,
it was
they are not going to be more than 5 games apart for the rest of the year. Yeah. And 6 weeks in, that is absolutely true. And part of that is just the Phillies and the Mets being themselves 2 talented but flawed teams that could use a little bit of help this week. Of course, the trade deadline is coming up this Thursday, 6 p.m. We have some plans here this show to possibly do a little Twitch or YouTube thing where we're checking out everything as it comes up right to the deadline. So we
get to see my face.
Podcast. Yeah, we get to.
I don't want that. I'm saying, do you have to see my face?
No. I can be the face of this operation. I can absorb all of that abuse. But here's the thing. The Phillies have a lot of avenues still. And I feel like for 3 weeks, It's just been a lot of staring down.
Nothing has changed.
Yeah, just a lot of the
I
Phillies
hate to say it.
these sellers. Well, hey, the good news is that this is almost certainly the last time we are going to say that, because because in a little more than 48 hours, like close to, whatever the math is, in 2+ days, the Phillies are going to make their moves. They're going to do at least one thing, probably two, maybe three. Who knows? That's the thing, though. We don't know. They could do any number of things. The only thing we do know right now that has significantly changed, and not that it was ever a forerunner possibility to begin with, is Emmanuel Clase is off the table now that he is under investigation in the betting scandal that embroiled his teammate Luis Ortiz a couple weeks ago. He's off. See ya. But apart from that, everything else that has been bandied about is still to a certain level in play.
Certainly, and there's some teams that were maybe thought as sellers 2 weeks ago who are now buyers. Texas Rangers, for example. The Angels, nobody knows what the Angels are doing. Par for the course, but no, not much has changed. And I'm not trying to use that as a cop-out, but I think there's been essentially a stare down. And a lot of this is that, what I heard is that, there's certain teams that weren't even taking offers, certain sellers that weren't taking offers on guys until this week. Even though there were teams interested, it's like, okay, well, let's wait. Great to know that you're interested. Let's see where we're at, week of. So I think a lot of it is really only starting to kind of crystallize, which is weird to say because I feel like we've been all talking about the trade deadline for weeks, but I guess that's my fault. People like me. My fault?
No, that's not a fault. We've known that this team needed help, and this is the time for it to arrive.
I think this is my best read now, Paul, on the situation, and this is not. It doesn't offer much clarity, but just reading the tea leaves, talking to many different people from other teams who've talked to the Phillies, who have made their prices known, and who have familiarity with the Phillies system and what they're willing to do. And I think it comes down to this: is that a couple different things can be true. And one of them is if you want a decent rental, one of the better rentals, you probably need to trade Mick Abel. If you want a controllable back-end reliever, you probably need to have Aiden Miller in the package. And those are the prices, I think, yes, and will, change in the next 48 hours. They will go down. Generally, the closer you get to the deadline, the more compromise there is, right? There is some lowering the prices. Some teams come in with higher offers, etc. Right? Deadlines create activity and action. So, as of now, I think that's generally where they stand. Talking to other teams, it sounds like there's been trouble, I think, in finding value in the Philly system beyond the top guys, and I think that has compromised the Phillies a little bit, in trying to build these packages, because we've talked about this. The drop off from after the first 4 or 5 guys at the top, it's pretty steep. From 7 to 14. If you're however you're ranking the players in in the farm system, there's a lot of just mediocre talent. I would say. Talent that's not. It hasn't caught the eyes of a lot of teams, and so I think that has hurt them maybe in the rental market the most. And it is not a strong rental market. It is certainly a seller's rental market.
Yeah.
But in the past, if you look at it, if they were to trade Abel for a rental, which I don't think they want to do, and I don't know that they would do. They've held firm on it that they don't want to do that. He would be, I think, by far the best prospect that Dombrowski will have traded for a rental in his time with the Phillies, right? The rental prospects they've traded before, and it depends, you can be the low man or high man on Abel, but then the rental, the prospects they've traded for rentals, Hal Yulee, Ben Brown, George Clausen, Samuel Aldegari, who am I missing? Everybody else, every other prospect they traded was for a controllable guy, like Spencer Howard and Logan O'Hoppe. They were traded for controllable players of different degrees. To me, Abel, I think, ranks above Lee, Brown, Aldegari, and Clausen, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Now, how much above, I don't know. And, this is where you're going to have to really know know your system and know your guys and decide, how big of a shot do we want to take here? And I still do think, and I've reported this, and I've asked and asked and asked and asked, and people I trust, and this remains true, the priority remains bullpen. Their priority remains upgrading the bullpen. They have certainly expressed interest to varying degrees in outfielders, and I do think that outfield is where they would go. And I think there is a scenario in which they, dramatically remake the outfield where it's your two guys are changing. Maybe you're trading from your major league roster, and maybe Brandon Marsh is going elsewhere, and Max Kepler is going elsewhere, or as a DFA, and you're acquiring a center fielder or left fielder, and you're promoting Justin Crawford, and you're changing out 2/3 of your outfield. Like that's I think well within the realm of possibility. I don't know that it's a likelihood, but I think it's certainly on the scale of possible outcomes in the next 48 hours. So I still think there's a lot at play, but I do think the market is not shaping up in their favor.
I believe the Phillies in their stance when they say that, or if not explicitly, that they can lean back on the fact that Justin Crawford is already an in-house option to put into the outfield. But you have...
It's hard to be worse.
Well, yeah, because there's a paragraph in your story that you put up, your most recent dispatch following the game in Chicago last night, and I'll read this because it's a short paragraph. Though the offense has clicked in July, it's not because of the outfield. Phillies outfielders have a 566 OPS this month. That ranks 29th in baseball. But wait, there's more. It's a 645 OPS since June 1st, 28th in baseball. The outfield is 27th in baseball since May 1st with a horns up 666 OPS. Matt, we have said that the strategy should probably be to lean into the strength to reinforce the pitching, because that is the backbone of this team. That is what can carry them, that and their top three hitters doing some damage. But man, even a little bit of help in the outfield right now could make a significant difference.
What if you only have so much, what if you only have so much prospect capital to use? I mean, are you saving what you can to use it for a big reliever and then just trying to, patch the holes with Crawford / just use the guys you have? Or do you want to are you spreading it around and you're just going to the same route they went last year and deadlines passed, where it's like, let's go get a rental reliever, let's go get a rental outfielder, which I mean, I think both scenarios are perfectly acceptable. I'm not sure. I don't know where I would stand there.
I think at this point it is somewhat prudent to take a half step back and think about what some of these minor leaguers would be used for, if not moved now or even in, the upcoming winter, right? Let's think about some of the names that we're talking about here. Justin Crawford seems unlikely he gets dealt. Seems like the Phillies are pretty content with having him in the organization, and
they're higher on Crawford than the majority of not everybody, but then the consensus majority from the industry. So that generally means that the player will be kept.
Yes. So you figure he's going to stick around. Aiden Miller, what's his deal? Well, it seems like he is a different offensive profile than the Phillies thought when they first drafted him. Not that that's terribly, not that that's a bad thing, really. He's hit for a little less power, but he's shown more speed. He's shown that he could probably stick at shortstop. But at the major league level, Trey Turner has also now this year shown that he can stick at shortstop. So that's something.
Sure. I mean, you're saying right now your adjusted projection for Miller is that he takes over either at shortstop or third base in 2027. You have a third baseman who's got one more year of club control after this year, right? So Bohm is through 2026. So you're thinking, okay, my adjusted profile is that Aiden Miller spends most of, if not all of 2026 at AAA. And, we're looking at him taking over a regular spot in 2027.
Yep. And yep. And all this to say, we're skipping over Andrew Painter because he's not getting moved. Then you think about some of the lower guys in the system who still carry some value. We're talking about the tier of, the Arun Escobars, the Eduardo Taites. They are still young enough that they are a few years away.
Hard to project.
Right. From major league contribution. And so you start to think, okay, this is a team that, and some part
And
of me is
remember, generally acquiring clubs like to acquire generally prospect talent that is closer to the majors. Generally.
yes, because you've seen in some of these other deals that the lottery tickets, so to speak, as you may hear them referred to, and I think Tait and Escobar still kind of
I
qualify as
agree.
lottery tickets.
Yes, I agree.
That they don't get moved like this quite as much. We saw
They
in
get moved, but I think that other teams have more value on a player that is closer, that has had a longer minor league track record.
Right. And so think about Curtis Mead for Christopher Sanchez, right? And think about the years that it took
Yeah.
for both of those players to really turn into what they have. Neither book is closed. Sanchez has emerged as an impact major leaguer more quickly than Mead. I don't think Mead's book has closed, but you look at the winding path that took from, oh no, the Phillies gave up a global top 100 for a guy whose role is uncertain, to, oh, the Phillies have an ace and the Rays have a utility player who can't quite hit yet. Like it's crazy, but that's, two lottery tickets exchanged for each other. That I certainly didn't see that coming. I did not know who Chris Sanchez was a few years ago before the Phillies picked him up.
No, and I think if you're the Phillies, you prefer to deal from this tier here.
Yeah.
But other teams may not prefer that. I mean, like, this is why trades are hard to make. I mean, like, you have, and I think Escobar and Tait are good prospects.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Escobar, and I think
there are
Tait's
people who really like both. I mean, people from out, I'm not saying Phillies people, I'm saying people within the industry from other clubs.
But this is now the point. I think the point I wanted to make in this roundabout way is this feels like a deadline to take a bigger swing than this team has taken in the past couple of years. I know that there's a little bit of souring on talk of windows and things like that. I do not think this team has a window that is closing. I think they have players
it's expensive to replace windows. Did you know that?
Yeah, yes, both on houses and in baseball. And it is, I think it is time for something a little bit more significant. And that is I'm not getting impatient. I think I would be fine with a lower tier move or moves if that's the angle, right? If that's what the organization and front office come together and say, we could actually make this work with, Danny Coulomb and something else coming in instead of one of the bigger names. Oh, okay. I can work with that personally. I'm not getting impatient here, but I do think that this is a team that can still make hay. That is still a team that is World Series caliber at its core, but it needs that help. I would like to see, I used this metaphor in the Discord, earlier this week. The playoffs to me are a wheel of outcomes that you spin. And the roster that you assemble, the players that are on it, the quality of these players and the way you deploy them affects the slices of the wheel that lead to your positive outcomes.
The fewer bankrupt spaces you have on your wheel, the better.
Exactly. You could still land on something bad. That's not like the nihilist perspective. It's just reality. You're not going to have a wheel that guarantees you a World Series championship, no matter how loaded you are. It worked out for the Dodgers last year, but it doesn't always work out that way. But you still want to
lost in the National League Division Series.
Right. You still got to get to the point where the options at your disposal give you more comfort. Really, that's what it comes down to. Have you feeling better about the probability, because this is a dice roll, feeling better about the probability that they give you that better outcome, that the wheel lands on a good space.
Well, I think also there's context here too, Paul, is that, like, the top of this sport right now is bunched pretty closely together.
Yes.
The Tigers were, like, for months now have had the best record in baseball, and they've now fallen back to earth. And all along we're like, oh, they think the Tigers are a good team, not so sure that they're a great team.
Yeah.
But you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams in the sport who have anywhere between 60 and 63 wins.
Mm-hmm.
8.
5 of them in the National League. Yeah.
5 of them in the National League. So, I mean, I think, I'm not saying whoever wins the trade deadline out of that group is now your World Series favorite. I don't think it's going to work that way, because there isn't going to be There is no Garrett Crochet getting
No.
traded at this deadline. There's no Rafi Devers getting traded here at this deadline. And the Giants, as it turns out, should they be sellers? Like, they're a game over 500 and they've been
What a
awful
weird
since they
arc
got
that
Devers.
is. Yeah.
That is a, yeah. But I think a meaningful move here, and I tend to agree with you, Paul, on that. So okay, taking a bigger swing, that means bullpen for me. And I know it's become harder because we're not so sure how big of a swing they can take. A lot of it might depend on how amenable the Minnesota Twins are to a trade. But if you take that big swing there, then you're saying I'm fine with either no offensive upgrade or a very marginal one.
I think
not involving Justin Crawford's possible promotion.
Okay, yes.
And I'm there with that. I think that's where I've stood all along. I think we've been talking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and that's still where I stand. As bad as the outfield is, and as flawed as this lineup can look at times, I think that's generally where I stand.
There are a couple things that I think are true right now. One, you just said that there is no huge difference maker at this trade deadline. There is nothing that can swing this team so comfortably far ahead for the rest of the regular season that you need to zero in on that and say this is the move and anything else is, far insignificant to that. And also, there is no move I think this team could make that could properly insulate them from a significant injury to one of their big starting pitchers or one of their top three hitters in Harper, Turner, and Schwarber.
Yeah.
I don't think it's there. If you get lucky and you have somebody step in and absorb a little bit of that, you saw that last year around the time, Harper and Turner and Schwarber had their injuries. There were guys who filled in for them during the regular season that really helped. If any of them were to be unavailable for the postseason, you can't really plan for that at this trade deadline. You can't pick up somebody who is playing at the level those three on the offensive side, or any of Wheeler or Sanchez or even Rangers still in the rotation, to say, okay, now we have insurance for that, because you'd be giving up too much for a thing that you don't need right now. You could say that there is outfield help potentially that could play at that level, and that is Luis Robert. He has shown that years ago that he could play at that level. He is not playing at that level right now. And if you were to bring him in, he is not the guy that you would lean on and say, yes, I expect you to play at the level of a Kyle Schwarber. Yes, I expect you to play at the level of a Bryce Harper, because it's not what he is right now. You could get it, but that's like a 1% chance of happening right now. That is fully banking on him being so miserable playing for the White Sox the last couple of years that even when he's been healthy, he hasn't played well, save the last couple of weeks.
I cannot remember a trade candidate like this one because it's complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's complicated because of how the White Sox view him. And I've talked to people on all sides of this, and it is hard to tell what is bluster and what isn't. I genuinely think that the White Sox believe that he should not be treated as a rental player, that an acquiring team should be trading something commensurate with a controllable player because he has this $20 million club option for next season. And right now, in no universe is anyone, including the Chicago White Sox, exercising a $20 million option on a player who, while talented and has incredible potential, we've seen it. This guy is talented.
Yes.
He has not been on the field a lot this year, and he now has had 2 straight years of underperformance. And I don't know, I think certainly some of it is posturing, and that's just how it is at this time. But the team that's acquiring Luis Robert Jr. is probably going to give up more than they should be giving up, is my guess, is how it ends up landing. And there is interest, and the Phillies have interest. I know this. I wrote it today. I think the Mets and the Padres are probably the 2 other clubs that are either have more or as much interest as the Phillies, probably a little more. I think the Padres are the heaviest on Robert, from what I can tell. But they're not treating him like a guy who has played 86 games with a 79 OPS plus this year and is, a little less than like a 1-win player. And we saw, you watch him Monday night and you're like, oh, I get it. I mean,
yes.
goes opposite field on a Christopher Sanchez changeup, makes a diving catch in center field, hit a hard liner to center, also struck out twice, made a mistake in center field that allowed Bryce Harper to take an extra bat. I mean, like,
yeah,
I think he's a good player. I do. And I think there's untapped talent in there. Is there a world, Paul, where even with the White Sox or any acquiring team of Robert sees enough in 2 months to exercise a $20 million option? And like, what would it take?
It would take Manny Ramirez going to the Los Angeles Dodgers 15 years ago. Really?
Yeah.
Manny hit almost 400 and garnered NL MVP votes after arriving from Boston.
Yeah.
That was how good he was. It would take that. It would take that,
but that's what, and I think teams are going to properly like call the White Sox on a bluff here, because let's say they're like, you know what? No, we're holding strong. We are not going to trade him. We think you've undervalued him. We're going to keep him, and we're going to exercise that option. Like, who's to say he just doesn't like shut it down if he doesn't get traded? I mean, I think you could argue that he's elevated his playing Julys because he sees the light at the end of the tunnel. I think he'd like to be playing somewhere else. I think he'd like to be playing for a contending team. I think they've traded away a lot of his friends and buddies from the core that was supposed to be the next great White Sox team, and really fizzled. He's kind of the last guy standing from that core, which is sad to think about, because that was a really talented, and I thought was going to be a really good team for a long time. And you look at the pieces they've traded away, they have been good. I mean, Sale and Crochet, and there were good players on that team. This guy was an MVP candidate 2 years ago. I get all of it. I get it. But I don't know. I think for all these reasons, I'm going to guess that the Phillies end up not getting him, because I when I first refloated his name a couple weeks ago, I was thinking this is the ultimate buy low. And I don't think I think that situation's changed.
Yeah. Is there any complication still lingering from the failed, you just mentioned Garrett Crochet. Is there any complication lingering from the failed Garrett Crochet talks a year ago?
I don't know. Probably not, because teams know they have to move on, even if there was some hard feelings. Like, you have to still do business. Dave Dombrowski and Preston Mattingly are out here in Chicago with the team, which is rare for them both to be traveling. Actually, quite rare. And they're both out here because the deadline is on an off day, so they'll be at home. The team flies out after the game Wednesday, so they'll be in the quote unquote war room with the rest of the front office for all day Thursday before the deadline. So it is a chance for them, if they wanted to interact on a in-person level with the White Sox front office, they can do that. They're here. I don't know if that really makes a difference in the modern era. Probably not.
It's an interesting dynamic to think of, because they're in the stadium of an organization with a team that they have significant interest in, that they are seriously considering making an offer for to pick up in a trade. Like, did Dombrowski and Mattingly just kind of like walk to an office at Rate Field and be like, all right, so let's chat? Like, how much time are they spending actually talking with the folks there? Like with Chris?
I don't know. I mean, the visiting executives get like a suite usually at most ballparks, and so I don't know. I mean, it's all these guys know each other on different levels, but I mean, I think that there's a way of doing business, and I highly recommend you read anyone who hasn't read it at The Athletic. Andy McCullough has a really good first piece, and there's a second piece going up today just about the interpersonal dynamics of like these different executives and like the styles of how they deal with one another and how they handle trade talks. And I thought it was very it was a very inside look at sort of the things that we don't really think about when it comes to making a trade happen, and a lot of it is about personality and the way that different GMs handle things, and it is pretty interesting.
So I think as we find ourselves here 106 games into this season with the Phillies at 60-46, still squarely in a playoff spot. They're 4.5 games secure in a spot. They currently inhabit the second wild card position. They're good but flawed, blah, blah, blah. It's the same as the last couple of weeks. I think everybody just really cares about what's going to happen in the next 48 hours from when this episode gets published. There probably isn't too much more to say, if I'm totally honest. I think we're included. I'm looking forward to Thursday.
Yeah. I mean, like, I wish I had more to offer. I mean, I think I think a lot of this has been a stare down. I mean, I think everybody in the sport knows where the Phillies stand. I think they have a top heavy farm system from which they don't really want to deal at the top. I think they're willing to trade some guys at the top, but not all, and not for rentals. And the drop off after those top 4 or 5 or so guys is steep. And I think that's hurt them in the rental market. And I also think that prices in the last 48 hours tend to drop. That's just how deadlines work. And I think I think there's value in jumping the market early on, and then there's value in waiting it out. So I think the middle period is where, you might get caught making a deal you regret. And so I think you're probably going to see the Phillies try to just hang on for dear life here and wait it out and see what happens on Thursday.
So in the meantime, as we all gear up for Thursday and get ready, a couple quick bits of housekeeping. We are planning to do a live stream of sorts. I'm planning to start that around 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm hoping to be on for a couple. I know you join when you feel like it. It's your off day.
It's not an off day, but yeah. So.
Well, yeah, right.
It's a
what
day not at the ballpark, which is great because
Yeah.
I can be on. I can participate in this because I won't. I will just be at home in my, spare bedroom, home office, and texting and making calls. But yeah, I can for sure be on. It'd be fun to kind of follow.
So we'll take that. We'll take that up through the deadline at 6 p.m. Eastern, and there are doubtless to be a couple of deals that get announced after that happens as they, get paperwork in under the wire. My early plan is, and stay tuned for more deals on this, but details on this. My early plan is to also turn that into something of a fundraiser for cancer research. I'll talk a little bit more about that later for anybody who wants to join. As well, over the next couple of days, if you want to talk with the sickos of the Hug Watch Committee, feel free to hop on over to our Patreon and join the Discord, patreon.com/Phillies Therapy. We are getting all the links and all the discussion over there, all the back channel texts and group texts and whispers and all this good stuff. It's great. It's maddening. It's fantastic. We'd love to have you as part of our group. Patreon.com/Phillies Therapy. If you want to support the show, we are very grateful for you. We have merch as well. Some people have been asking for that, and we've already had like 10 orders come in. It's amazing. Thank you, everybody, for your support there. We're just this little growing thing, and I'm continuously humbled and thrilled and amazed that so many people are that interested in what we have to say about this team and how we do it. So thank you to everybody who's been a part of that. Matt, I think we'll bring ourselves to a close here because there isn't a whole lot more we can say ahead of Thursday. But is there anything in particular you'd like for us to look forward to over these next couple of days while you're in Chicago and while we all gear up for potential deals?
Not really. I would say one thing that you should read today is I keep, not because I work there, but I think it's smart stuff, is Tim Britton wrote, I thought what was really a really good story using, past trade deadline deals to try to find comps for players on this market, this trade deadline. And it's really interesting. I think it's instructive. It just gives you an idea of what, past prices were for similar type players. And I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So I recommend that.
Published here for historical listening, July 29th here at The Athletic. It's Tim Britton. Okay.
That's today. Yes.
Yep, that's today. Taco Tuesday, July 29th, as we get ready for Thursday. All right, that's cool. That's it. We'll wrap it up there. Not a whole lot else to say about the Major League team. They are who we continue to think they are for the next couple of days at least. They got 2 more games in Chicago against the White Sox. Jesus Luzardo goes tonight. Be interested to see what version of him we get. That's another discussion for post-deadline. We'll see what happens with him in August and September. And in the meantime, stay cool if you're here out east, or really, I guess in Illinois. Matt, you said it's nice and toasty out there too. Stay cool everywhere. Hope your air conditioner or fans work. And enjoy a little bit of baseball the next couple of days. We will be with you. If anything big happens, we'll hop on for a quick little emergency pod, I guess, if it warrants it. I don't know. Maybe something could happen. We'll see. Yeah, all right, that's it. That's enough vamping. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Phillies Therapy, part of the Believe Podcast Network. For Matt, I am Paul, and we will talk to you again soon.